I'm working in the New Perspectives Microsoft Access 2010 textbook. I'm in Tutorial 4 on page AC192, and I'm going to create a report using the Report Wizard. I'll start by going to Create, and I'm going to find the Report Wizard. By this point in the textbook, the Report Wizard, Form Wizard, Query Wizard should all be looking pretty familiar. They all operate the same way. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to click the Customer table. The fields that I want are Customer ID, Company, First, Last, City, and Phone. From the Contract table, I want all the fields, and I'm going to put the foreign key back. Next, how do I want to view my data? I want to view my data grouped by customer. So I'm going to have customer ID and all the customer information, and then the contracts for that customer. Then I'll go to the next customer and their contracts, pretty much like we saw with the main form, subform. Only I'm going to be using a grouped report, not a report subreport. If I group by customer, I will just get a single record for each contract with the customer information. If you want more information, you can do the show more information. It'll give you some examples. I'm going to close that. With that selected, I'll click Next. Do I want any additional grouping levels? In your homework, you'll be asked to create additional grouping levels. Now, what does that mean? But is there some other way that I would like to look at this data? An obvious one that I might choose is city. I would like to look at this data first by city, and then the customers within that city, and then the contracts that customer has. So I can add additional grouping levels. In this case, I chose city. I'll go ahead and put the city field back. So as you're choosing a grouping level, think about something that would make sense. Does signing date make sense? Well, if I'm looking for all the contracts that are added by a particular signing date, well, perhaps. But what this is going to do actually is not give you a date, but it's going to give you a month. So with your customers, I could choose first by customer, and then I could look by month how those contracts are signed, or I could actually move it up with the priority listing. So then I'm looking at signing date by month, and then my customers, and then the contracts. This would be really handy if I'm interested in when are my big months, when are my small months, when do I need to add staff. You probably, as an owner of a business, have a feel for that, but this report could help tremendously in narrowing that information down and giving you some statistics. Let's go ahead and put that back. Let's make sure that we have only the main one grouping level, and that's by customer. And in our contract, contract num, contract amount, signing date, contract type, and we'll go next. We're asked to sort by signing date, so I'm going to choose signing date from this list. Now I want you to pay attention now. Signing date is actually the third field in this list. When we're finished with the report, you're going to see that signing date will become the first field in the contract section. It's because, remember how Access sorted in queries. As you move left to right, the first sort you come to is your primary sort, then your secondary sort, and so on. And Access actually just takes that first sort field and moves it to the first position. Summary options, if we wanted to sum, average, just the simple things we can do to a field that we can actually do something to. Contract amount is my only number field, and so that's the one it's suggested to me. Now, I can count on any of the other fields, but it would not make sense to even try to average a text field, so it doesn't give me those options. I'm going to cancel out of this. Click Next. How do I want this to appear? Now, the layout wizard gives you some pictures of what they may look like, but your best option here really is just to take about 20-30 minutes, take the same set of data, and create all three reports on the same set of data, and just see how it lays it out. Some use space more efficiently than others. Your outline format uses space fairly efficiently, and so you're going to see in the book that that's often the one you're asked to do is outline. We're going to go with landscape. With this particular report, we don't need to go landscape, but it's our first report, And rather than trying to squish everything into a portrait orientation, the book has just decided that we're going to go landscape and make it easier for you on this first report. But be aware that if you were doing this for your own business or doing it for your boss, if you're wasting paper, and paper being a hot topic, particularly with sustainability, you might get yourself in trouble. So make sure that when you are laying out your reports, you're laying them out the most effective, most efficient way for your business. We're going to go with landscape here. We'll click next. What are we going to name this? We're going to name it customers and contracts. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish and take a look at my report. Here's the way my report lays out. Print preview. It's not a particularly pretty report, but it works. And let's go ahead and close print preview and get on about making some changes. We're asked to change the report's theme. So I'm going to go to layout view. I could do this in design view as well. But the thing about changing the theme in layout view, it instantly applies that theme and you can see the changes that are being made. So I'm going to go to themes. Since I've already applied perspectives in this database, it should show up in this top group. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to apply theme to this object only. You can see by doing that, I'm losing part of my S here. Contract num looks okay. That's long enough. And different PCs, you may see this laid out differently. So you cannot just look at the book and go, oh, I need to change this, this, and this. That's not correct. You need to take a look at your particular report and see what needs to be done to it. It's not simply a matter of following all the steps in the book and going, well, I followed the steps, I should be right. It doesn't work that way. Look at it, see what needs to be done, and make those changes. One of the first changes I'm going to do is I'm going to fix my title, customers and contracts. Now when I resize this, because it's going to, reports are printed. One thing that you're going to find out when I go to print preview here is that sometimes the final letter will be dropped because the box is not quite big enough. So get in the habit of resizing so there's room in here between your last letter and the border of the box for one more letter. So if I were to put like an extra S in there. So there's room for one more letter. Now some of the other things that we need to look at is, oh, my signing date is really messed up. Yours may not look like quite that badly. And one of the other things, my company field is probably not long enough. Definitely not long enough. So I'm going to have to be making some changes to this report. The book has you do a lot of this in layout view. This was much easier to do actually in Access 07. Layout view worked differently. Layout view was first introduced in 07. It is now changed for 2010, and I'm finding that many of these things now are easier to do in design view than they are to do in layout view. It's very hard to see how the boxes work in layout view, so we're going to switch to design view and make our changes. One of the first things that we want to do is that we have lots of space here, and city and phone are sitting right on top of these other controls. So I'm going to grab those. To grab those, I click above one of them, click, hold, and drag to select all of them. I can either use my mouse to drag them over, or I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move those controls over until they're closer to the far end, to the right end of the page. Then I can move over to my company field and have it resized to take up all that excess space. Let's see, I'm going to save and I'm going to take a look at this in print preview. And I'm going to take a look. Rapid view, Kalamazoo. That's one of my bigger ones. And see, there's plenty of space there, so that one's working. The next thing I need to do is that these columns are not wide enough. Now here's a trick that you're not going to see in your textbook, at least for a while. The textbook has you resize these all individually in layout view. You do not want controls overlapping one another. You don't want to see something like this going on, where you have one control on top of another. You don't want to see that happen. The reason you don't want to see that is that there's going to be some advanced features that you'll be able to use in aligning and setting vertical and horizontal space. So you don't really want to overlap. The other thing that you do want to do is you want to keep this group the same size, this group the same size, this the same size, this the same size, and you want to keep them all aligned properly. So I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to come out into my ruler and I'm going to point at my labels. You see the black arrow pointing at the labels. I'm going to click, hold, and drag until I've selected my labels and my text boxes. From here, I'm going to click on Report Design Tools Arrange ribbon, and I'm going to find Tabular. I'm going to find the Tabular. I'm going to pull this out so you can see it. Tabular. I'm going to click Tabular, and it's going to move those controls slightly over to the left. That's okay. They still align. They're still within the margins with customer and with your page footer. They still work. And now they're in a group. And what this is going to allow me to do is to work better with them in layout view. So now I'm going to go to layout view and I'm going to look at those controls again. Remember how narrow that was? I'm going to give this a little extra space. Giving one of them extra space is going to move the rest of them over. Contract num is way too wide. I'm going to bring it in. And bringing it in, contract amount and contract type come in. And now I have plenty of room. So I'm going to bring these controls over. And let's go to print preview and take a look to see how our report looks. Now it's going to be hard again because my screen's so small, but we can basically see if all of my contract types seem to be chopped off, if all of my company names seem to be chopped off, if I see any of those hash marks, then I know I have a problem. So let's just fast forward through this, and it's looking, you're not seeing anything just simply chopped off. It looks like it's working. I'm going to close it, print preview. I'm going to open that again, and I'm going to switch to design view. The page footer as a label. Now if I want to align that, I can grab all these controls. I told you I might do this. Arrange, align. Well, let's start with space to tallest, align to top, and now Axis doesn't work well with centering, so I'm going to have to manually center this. And so I'm going to look at my page margin is 10.5, which means my center point is 5.25, which is approximately right there. So I want this line, this dot, to end up about under this. So I'm going to grab that and move it over. It looks close. There we go. And last step here, format, I'm going to center that text. And let's take a look at it. Looks pretty good. There's a quick and dirty report for you using some things that you did not see in the textbook. We used design view. We set up a group and then went back to layout view, and we could very easily set our column widths. And also took a quick look at the size. So we made it to tallest, and we also aligned to top. Those are the controls, are the features that don't work if we have overlapping objects.